Technical advisor, right? All right. Here we go. Good morning. We have Buffalo online, so we can move forward. The time is now 10:16 on December 5th, 2017. Welcome to the December meeting of the New York State Fire Prevention Council. We'll move right into the agenda this morning, which is number one, agenda item one, welcome. We've got several announcements. You'll notice a difference in where I'm sitting. Next to me is John Adario. You've met him before. He's the director of the Division of Building Standards and Codes. It occurred to me after the last meeting that as we move into the 2018 adoption, I need someone smarter than me, so I'm here to act as a technical advisor. So John is smarter when it comes to the code and many other things. So he's going to sit here and be able to help us sort of work through some of the issues as they come up in the 2018. I'm going to note the absence, moving on, note the absence of Barb Rice. She was called away to a function of state, so she's not joining us today. I'm also going to note the absence of Bill Tucker, and I want to thank him for his service on the council. On behalf of the Secretary and the people of the state, Bill, as you know, was the mayor of Canasteo and has recently retired, so can't serve on the council anymore. But I want to thank him and give him my heartfelt appreciation for all the work he did with us. So that brings up that we now have 4 vacancies on the council: town, village, fire service, and code enforcement. 2 of those can be appointed by the governor. 2 of those require Senate confirmation of gubernatorial appointment. We are working on names for all 4 right now. If members of the council have ideas, happy to hear them. We'd like to see resumes as we move forward. I think that's it for today. So at this point, I'll ask Gerard to call a roll and get a quorum.
Very good. Okay. Matt Tebow, designee for Secretary Rosado.
Present.
Paul Martin, designee for Fire Administrator Neary.
Here.
Michael Weber, designee for Commissioner Wisnauskas. Michael Weber. Okay. Vincent Rappucciulo, designee for Commissioner Reardon.
Here.
Keith Wen, designee for Honorable Bill de Blasio.
Here.
Michael Sabatino.
Here.
Tom Lucchesi, designee for Honorable Judith Kennedy.
Here.
John Hamlin.
Here.
Tim DeRuscher.
Here.
Bill Tyne.
Here.
Patrick Dolan.
Here.
Dominic Marinelli.
Here.
11. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you, Gerard. Now that we have a quorum, we'll move to agenda item 2, the minutes of the third quarter meeting, September 27th, 2017. You should have received this in your packets. Are there any questions, comments, etc. with regard to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor of adopting the minutes of September 27th, 2017, signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed? Minutes are adopted. Okay, agenda item 3, modification of executive law, section 379(1). This is with regards to more restrictive local standard, sort of apropos for today. I'll just briefly give an update. About a month ago, the governor signed Chapter 348 of the laws of 2017. This new law will change the paradigm of more restrictive local standards for local governments. Now, under the new approach, local governments must come to us and get approval before they can enforce a more restrictive local standard. As you know, currently, during the pendency of our review, they may enforce it until such time as we act. So that is now changed. Are there any questions with regard to that?
Is there anything in place to make the review quicker than what has been?
Well, that's a great question, Tom. I mean, I think at this point, the division is very much going to have to prioritize these because, you know, it can't go out 2 years. It's not fair to the municipality as it has in the past. So, I mean, I don't.
We recently updated the notice of petition application to solicit better information from municipalities to kind of minimize the back and forths that we have with municipalities in order to get what we need to perform the review. So we've been making steps to try to work through it a little bit quicker.
So we're hopeful that with that in place and the knowledge that we have to move faster, that we will. I mean, I don't particularly like the fact that we let things go as we had to because of staffing and where we were with the 2015 code when a lot of these came in. So hopefully now that we're moving for a solid footing here. Yeah, segue right in. Is there any other questions, comments, etc.? All right, hearing none. Now we move into the more restrictive local standard portion of our program today. We have 5 on the agenda. Let's see how these go. Agenda item 4, more restrictive local standard for the town of Huron is local law number 2 of 2015, dealing with flood provisions. I'm going to let Gerard receive the, in your packets, you received the agency analysis of the request. This is a difficult one in that, you know, we have some standards that appear more restrictive and some that appear less. So I'm going to let Gerard just sort of take us through a conversation he just had with the attorney for the town, and then we'll figure out what we're doing here.
What I'd like to do, just take a little pause for a second before that one, and allow Nick to do a short
That's a good idea.
overview, a little review of, I know we've probably heard before, just an overview of Executive Law 379 and how to deal with restrictive local standards.
So, one of the primary reasons for establishing a uniform code was to ensure that all communities in the state had effective standards to protect against the perils of fire and inadequate building construction. Prior to the enactment of Executive Law Article 18, the decision of whether to have a building or fire prevention code was left to the discretion of each local government. By including provisions in Article 18, Section 379, allow local governments to adopt more restrictive local standards for construction, it appears that the legislature recognized that the Uniform Code may need to be adjusted and made more restrictive in certain local governments where, because of special conditions prevailing in such government, the minimum standards imposed by the Uniform Code may not be sufficient to provide a basic minimum level of protection to people in that local government. To demonstrate compliance with 379, a local law or ordinance must be submitted by the correct individual within the correct time frame, that is the chief executive officer, or if there be none, the chairman of the legislative body, within 30 days of enactment or adoption. Be reasonably necessary because of special conditions prevailing within the local government. Be more restrictive than the Uniform Code. Conform to accepted engineering and fire prevention practices, and conform to the purpose of Article 18. If the Code Council find that the more restrictive local standards meet all of the aforementioned criteria, it shall approve the standard in whole or in part. The Code Council has the power to limit the duration of the standard, impose conditions in connection with the adoption, and to terminate the standard at such times and in such manner that the Council deems necessary, desirable, or proper. Except for Nassau County, local laws or ordinances shall take full force and effect upon an affirmative determination by the council. The special conditions may be one of the most critical components of an MRLS petition. Practically speaking, special conditions justify the need for more restrictive local standard. In one respect, special conditions may be regarded as a localized problem, whereas the MRLS is the solution. A local government may enact standards for construction that are more restrictive than the code, conform to accepted engineering and fire prevention practices, and conform to the purpose of Article 18. But if such standards are not reasonably necessary because of special conditions, then the standards are apparently unnecessary and cannot be approved by the council. So I guess just keep this in mind when we move forward with future MRLS petitions.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Gerard.
Agenda item 4, The Huron is the more restrictive local standard basically for flood provisions in that community. It has been here a while. They reenacted in 2016 to update that and get it to us in a timely manner. We have reviewed it. You've seen the review. We sent it on to the municipality, who also reviewed it. And I had a phone conversation with Amy Kendall, their legal advisor, who asked that we table this to the next meeting since no one was going to be able to attend. And I said, certainly, if we can put that in front of the council. If the council decides they want to table this, we can. If you decide you want to hear more and try to discuss this and identify if you want to proceed anyway, that's certainly up to you. And I guess we leave it up to the council whether you want to hear a little bit more or go ahead and let them table this at this point.
I'm going to point out that as part of their local law, the town of Huron has basically a provision that says, regardless of chapter 348 of 17, that they will not enforce this provision until such time as we act.
And I confirmed with Huron that they have not been enforcing it. They've been enforcing the current code, which brings them a long ways to where they wanted to be, since this was written based on the 2010 code. And now we're reviewing it compared to the current code.
So I leave open to the council whether they want to move forward today or we want to honor the request and push them out until the March meeting. It will be almost 3 months before we meet again, so. Does anyone have strong feelings about this?
Just a question, did they request it be withdrawn?
Yes.
Postponed?
They asked for
They asked for postponement to the next meeting.
They're not withdrawing
Okay.
the local law. It's still on their books, non-enforced.
They wanted to make sure that I conveyed to the council that them not being here does not mean they're not concerned about this. That they certainly are. They just couldn't be here today.
I'll make a motion with the municipality, I understand, has made a request to postpone, that this be postponed to the next meeting then.
Okay?
I second it.
Okay. All in favor, we're just going to do a voice vote. Anybody, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this is knocked off the agenda, and we will move it to the March 7th agenda. Thank you, Jordan. Agenda item 5, MRLS, Town of Brookhaven, local law number 5 of 2014 and local law number 11 of 2016. Carbon monoxide detection in non-residential buildings.
On March 25th, 2014, the town of Brookhaven enacted Local Law 5 of 2014, which required carbon monoxide detection devices in all new and existing non-residential buildings. The law was adopted prior to the Code Council adding commercial carbon monoxide detection requirements to the Uniform Code. Following adoption of the carbon monoxide requirements by the council, staff prepared an analysis of the town's petition and determined that the documentation submitted by the town did not appear to substantiate the claim that special conditions were prevailing in the town. The analysis also cited several other areas of concern with the local law. At the March 9th, 2016 Code Council meeting, the council was presented with a staff analysis outlining these deficiencies. Motion was made at the meeting to postpone any decision until a future meeting to allow the town to develop additional information in support of the existence of special conditions and to present the town's views on the petition to the Code Council. Following that meeting, the town enacted Local Law 11 of 2016 to correct the deficiencies identified by staff in Local Law 5 of 2014. So the Code Council is acting on two local laws today. Local Law 11 of 2016, which amended portions of Local Law 5 of 2014. In general, the local laws enact the following standards for construction. The local laws require carbon monoxide detection devices and/or systems in all existing and newly constructed non-residential buildings and structures that are used for human occupation. Where an approved fire alarm system exists within a building and such system is capable of being interconnected to the carbon monoxide detection device, the carbon monoxide detection shall be interconnected to the existing fire alarm system. In buildings where a fire alarm system is not required and does not exist, and in buildings with an existing approved fire alarm system that is not capable of interconnection to carbon monoxide detection, carbon monoxide alarms may be permitted to be installed in a manner prescribed by the Chief Fire Marshal following a review of the existing conditions. The local laws provide that where carbon monoxide alarms are permitted, such alarms shall be hardwired to the building's electrical system and equipped with battery backup. Such work shall be performed by a licensed electrician. The Code Council is provided with a detailed analysis of the local laws and their comparisons to the Uniform Code. Some of the local laws standards appear to be less restrictive than the Uniform Code, while others appear to be more restrictive. Likewise, some of the standards appear to conform to accepted engineering and fire prevention practices, while others do not. Finally, the standards for construction imposed by both local laws do not appear to conform with the purpose of Article 18. A summary of the standards for construction are contained in Part 1 of the analysis that was provided to you. In addition to the amended standards for construction, the second petition to the Code Council, which is Local Law 11 of 2016, also identified two new special conditions that the town believes makes the standards for construction reasonably necessary. The special conditions as identified by the town are as follows. The town claimed that newly constructed buildings are being constructed tighter with less air filtration, thereby allowing carbon monoxide from improperly operating or improperly installed fuel burning equipment to accumulate faster. Staff does not believe that this is a special condition prevailing within the municipality. Instead, the current energy code requires buildings to be constructed tighter than in the past. The town cites an older MRLS approved by the council as a special condition. The town states that Local Law 8 of 1988 requires fire alarm systems in most buildings. That many buildings in the town now have fire alarm systems as required by Local Law 8 of 1988. And therefore, the infrastructure required for the connection of the carbon monoxide detection devices and/or systems as required by the local laws is readily available in the town. Assuming that many buildings in the town do have fire alarm systems in compliance with Local Law 8 of 1988, and assuming that it is relatively easy to interconnect the carbon monoxide detection systems as required by the local laws, those facts merely indicate that it may be relatively easy and relatively inexpensive for building owners in the town to comply with the standards imposed by the local laws. However, those facts do not support an argument that it is reasonably necessary to impose those local laws. The town states that about 1,800 buildings, representing about 40% of the town's commercial building inventory, are already in compliance with the local laws. As Matt pointed out earlier, Executive Law 379 was recently changed. The past version of 379 required local governments to enforce their local laws during the period that the council was considering the petition. Unfortunately, a local government complying with the Executive Law 379 does not appear to be a special condition. Are there any questions on the special conditions up to this point?
Before we start questions, I'm just going to note that there are members of the town of Brookhaven who are here. They're going to address the council in a second. I think it's probably best that we ask our questions of Nick, and then Nick can yield the floor to them. They'll come up, give their talk, and then we can ask questions of them. So, are there any questions for Nick before we move on to the town's representatives? Okay, hearing none. Nick, you can yield the floor. Gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Chris Merman. I'm the Chief Fire Marshal from the town of Brookhaven. With me is Senior Fire Marshal Walter Dunn with the Town of Brookhaven. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak before the council today. Just to address our local, more restrictive local standard, as Mr. McAndrew had stated, our MRLS came into effect before the state took their emergency measures to enact the law. Our town supervisor recognized the need for something to be in place, all as a result, as I'm sure everyone is aware, of death at the Legal Seafood in a jurisdiction near to us. This was enacted and filed appropriately and has been enforced for 3.5 years, which does not, I'm sure does not meet the standard of special conditions, but the council needs to understand that we have been enforcing this for 3.5 years. While the council had other important business going on, you were moving from the 2010 to the 2015 code, but in that time period, as of today, we're rapidly approaching 50% of our inventory, our commercial inventory in the town of Brookhaven, in compliance with our local standard, being that carbon monoxide detection installed in these buildings. Our main purpose of our more restrictive local standard was we felt that these devices needed to be supervised. Right? I'll give you a perfect example why they need to be supervised. We arrived here a little bit early this morning. We were down having breakfast in the restaurant downstairs and looked up, and there is a base for a 110 volt carbon monoxide alarm. That alarm is not there. This is what we're trying to prevent in the town of Brookhaven. We have had instances where we had the 110 or the 10-year battery alarm installed in buildings, and the management there, it's activated. Two instances, it's activated, and we have statements from the employees that the manager removed it from the building and continued working. One resulted in the fire department responding. There were no patients, but it was still a response. So we feel the importance of having these life safety devices supervised by an alarm system is paramount here. And that is the real gist of our MRLS. You have anything to add?
Yeah, the reason why the fire alarm system was focused on was, as Mr. McAndrew said in his opening remarks regarding this MRLS, most commercial buildings in the town of Brookhaven are equipped with fire alarm systems that are central station monitored, that are in compliance with that local law of 1988. And what we were trying to do when tasked by Supervisor Romaine and the town board to come up with something to address the lack of carbon monoxide detection in commercial buildings was to look for a way that we could build upon existing infrastructure, the fire alarm systems that are already in these buildings, and utilize that infrastructure to provide the interconnection of the CO detection to allow for supervision, as Chief Merman said, of the device within the system, but also notification through Central Station that there is in fact an activation of the device, which would initiate a fire department response. We have had instances where the devices have activated, but were either not heard or not recognized as an emergency situation by building occupants, and because of the interconnection with the fire alarm system and Central Station monitoring, the fire department was dispatched, did arrive, and did find significant levels of carbon monoxide within the building that the occupants were not even aware of. They were not even aware that there was an issue until the fire chief walked through the door and asked, what are you doing here? Subsequently, the CO was found, the source was shut down, and the building vented. Another significant part of this process was to try to take into account the cost. We're sensitive to businesses having to comply with regulations, not just from the town, but from the state, from particular agencies that may pertain to their specialized business. And we're looking for the life safety, but also in a manner that is cost effective and would make the most sense. And we did significant outreach to the Alarm Association in the area, knowing that they were going to be the ones that would be installing these devices, and looking for feedback from them on ways that we could accomplish our goal without inconveniencing unnecessarily their customers, the business owners, property owners in the town, and do it in a cost-effective manner. And I think that relationship resulted in a good, workable program that has proven its success and still does prove its success throughout the town when we do have these carbon monoxide incidents. So while it was said that the particular special conditions that we include in our petition, that there may be debate and discussion on whether or not they rise to the level of the definition of a special condition, I would ask the council that you consider our intent, our desire and willingness to work with property owners and business owners to accomplish this life safety goal that I think we all share. If we didn't share it, we wouldn't all be here. And at the same time recognize, as Chief Merman said, that we've had this program in effect now for 3.5 years. And what is also noteworthy is that during the process of adoption of these local laws, there was not an outcry, there was not an objection from property owners and business owners with respect to the cost and the requirement to do this. And I think that's very noteworthy, because typically when there's a group who has skin in the game, so to speak, where something could cost them significant money or significant inconvenience, in their opinion, they do come out and they do express that. And we did not see that. We made an effort to communicate with the Alarm Association, but also with business groups to try to express our concern. And what we got back, and understandably so in the climate following Legal Seafood, was, as the chief said, we don't want that to happen here. We don't want that to happen in our business, to our employees, or to our customers, because it's just plain bad. Bad as a person, bad for business, and they didn't want to see that happen either. So I would certainly ask the council to consider all the efforts that we have put into this, and we understand and appreciate the efforts that were put in by staff in this council in adopting the state emergency measure for CO detection as well. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Just one other comment. I'm sure you're all aware of Mr. McAndrews' work. Working with him was a pleasure. Somebody coming from a town, a rather large town, we don't do this very often, and the staff's assistance with this was greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you guys for very detailed. Before you run away, is there anybody that would like to ask any questions of these gentlemen? Paul?
Yes, Chief, do you know roughly the percentage of fire alarm systems that have been added as a result of post-88 local law that are currently capable of having the CO detection added to them and thus function as specified in 175 general requirement, i.e., the reprogramming?
I don't have those numbers. Since '88, I would say over 90% of our buildings have fire alarm systems. There have been situations, large strip malls, things like that, that the panels weren't capable of handling the carbon monoxide detection, the additional detection. There weren't expansion modules available any longer due to their age. And in speaking with the landlords, we met with them. The landlords voluntarily upgraded their system. Of course, they passed that cost on to their tenants, but anything that we've run into, upgrades, things like that, every one of those property owners have had the opportunity to put in writing to me a letter requesting relief, and the great majority has not. I've had a few very small businesses contact me that have not had fire alarm systems, and we've enforced the alarm. I probably doesn't answer your question fully, but
Thank you.
The vast majority are capable. The panels that were not capable, as the chief said, were either maxed out as far as their capacity because of the size of the installation, or the age just was not capable of taking on devices that are manufactured today.
Thank you.
Many of the systems we did go in, just to add on, when we were reviewing the systems, many of them had system troubles on them, and when we asked the installers, can these be repaired, he said, no, I can't make repairs to these anymore. They're just kind of holding on. So that was also a driving force behind it, was making those repairs. So many of them were handled in that fashion. Yes, sir.
So is it your opinion that the main difference between your local law and what's currently in the regulations and the state code, that you basically have a requirement for connecting these to fire alarm systems that are in place in a vast majority of your buildings, just to get the supervision, the other technical pieces as far as devices, where they're located, is essentially the same?
Essentially, they're the same. There were some, Mr. McAndrew had pointed out with parking garages and the way the system works. But to answer your question, having the device supervised and having the emergency forces, the fire department, the police department responding, those are the key components to our MRLS that differs from the state. As far as placement goes, I think placement is relatively the same, consistent with the state.
Okay, thank you.
And there was some discussion about the devices, systems activating. We're in compliance with, we're not activating fire alarm systems. We're not activating fire notification devices. We haven't worked where it's doing it for carbon monoxide.
I have a question here.
Go ahead.
Hello, this is Keith from New York City. Chief, can you tell me, prior to the enactment of Local Law 5 and Local Law 11, was there a requirement for CO detector in non-residential building in your township?
There was not. I don't
So-
believe there was anything in the state.
Prior to 2014, there was none.
Okay, so then during the drafting of the two local laws, was there any studies or data to support the idea of connecting the detectors to your central system? Is there any data to say, people are frequently, disconnecting or removing the CO detector, doing nuisance alarms or things like that?
Official statistics, no. We just know from, I've been a firefighter for 30 years. I've walked into many a house after a fire and asked, did the smoke alarms go off? No, we took that down because of the smoke from cooking. People take down these detectors, and that's why we felt that when we were going into a place where the public is going into, this isn't your home, this is the public going into it, they have that expectation of being safe. To have a device that can simply be taken off the wall and there be no notification, that was a problem for us. And that's why we wanted to put this into effect where it was supervised and the appropriate people would be notified if the device was taken down. But to answer your question, statistics, no, I don't have any. Human nature.
I guess it's a little different than smoke detector because, like you explained in that one scenario, was it in a restaurant or something that the detector went off and they just simply disabled it and didn't do anything with it? So I guess because it's just simply invisible and there's no scent or anything, versus I guess if you have a smoke condition, you realize something's wrong and you would immediately evacuate that space, right?
As they say, it's the silent killer. It was actually a automotive repair. It was a tire outlet store.
Yeah, I just want to point out that it's really important that when the system is connected to a central system and you guys are being alerted, and then you can arrive on scene and found out exactly what went wrong with that space and ask everyone to get out.
That's key. That is key to the program.
I just have a question for staff? I understand that the current state regulations do not require in every instance the CO detection to be connected to a fire alarm system that goes to a central station? There's no code requirement for CO detection to do that?
One more time?
Does the state regulation and state code require any CO detection by state statute to be connected to a fire alarm system and consequent connection to a central station?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so the answer is no. Thank you.
I'm still working on your other question. Same location. It seems that it's both. The local law is more restrictive and less restrictive uniform code with respect to locations of the alarms being installed. So it seems like the first section of the town code, section 30-176D, is added by local law 11 of 2016, requires detection to be centrally located on every habitable level and every heating, ventilation, air conditioning zone of the building. We had this provision be marked up as less restrictive because I think the local law failed to define classrooms in the same way the uniform code does. The uniform code requires carbon monoxide detection in all classrooms in addition to, I believe, other areas of the school, whereas the local law didn't quite address it this way. So in a certain respect, the local law is less restrictive as far as locations are required. But then again, it's also more restrictive because the local law requires detection to be installed on the ceiling in the same room as the permanently installed fuel burning appliances in addition to other locations specified by the code, whereas the uniform code does not. So it's not quite apples to apples with regard to location. In some instances, the local law is on par. In some instances, they're more restrictive. And in other instances, it seems like it's less restrictive.
So is there a section in the local law that refers back to wherever there is a conflict that the more restrictive provisions prevail?
Yeah, give me a second. You didn't read the 30-page?
I did, but it was 11:30 last night, so I.
Give me 1 second.
Jim, I
You do have
believe
that
the
covered.
local law provides that in the event of a conflict, the local law will control. The provision resolves conflicts in favor of the local law, not in favor of the more restrictive necessarily.
Well, our belief was that we were the more restrictive because putting carbon monoxide in each and every HVAC zone would cover anything going into the classroom space. Although if two classrooms were sharing the same HVAC zone, then yes, one device would be sufficient. But I believe if that was a stumbling point, I believe the council has the ability to recommend or require modifications, we'd be more than happy to change that if needed. If the part about the going with the more restrictive, obviously.
Not so much a question for the chief, but just more of a comment. Philosophically, I can certainly get behind the desire to have these devices monitored. That one's clear. I think where I'm growing apprehensive is this, because we're taking two local laws, kind of doing them simultaneously, mashing everything together. I'm afraid, in my mind, it begins to collapse under its own weight and in technical aspects, and potentially runs into areas where it could be more restrictive, could be less restrictive, and I, if really the town's desire is interconnected for supervision purposes, I'd much prefer to see a clean statute that does that.
Can I address your comments? Thank you. I agree with Chief Martin. What had happened, as Mr. McAndrew had stated, what happened was we initiated the first local law, and then based on staff's analysis, we attempted to address all of those in the second all of those concerns in the second local law. basically, we'll do whatever the council indicates us to do to assist in getting this local law to remain, the main components of it to remain. If modifications need to be made, that's certainly on the table for us.
Nick?
Mr. Martin, I'd also like to point out again, I guess the state and the municipality were off to the race at the same time as far as carbon monoxide is concerned, and I think they got to the finish line first, so that's another reason why there are discrepancies between their local law and the Uniform Code.
Any other questions or comments for the chiefs? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any further debate on this MRLS among the council? Okay. Tim?
Okay, so I guess is a fundamental question, specifically for this specific more restrictive local standard, but also in the broader context. I hear the information about higher or more restrictive standards because of special conditions, accepted engineering practices, etc. But there's also another paragraph in that same statute that specifically deals with, it wasn't, this section was, and I'm going to quote it, nothing in this article shall be construed to prohibit any municipality from adopting or enacting any building regulations relating to any matter as to which the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code does not provide. So, reading that, and I've been working in the code industry since 1983, just before that first green book in the Uniform Code came into play, it was always my understanding over the last 30 plus years that this was a minimum standard, just as Nick had indicated earlier, to be applied everywhere across the state so everybody had at least a minimum go-to base. Now it seems that we're getting into, or being requested, the council's being requested to review if there is special conditions and whether or not those special conditions qualify, or we can interpret that to be present so that in fact the local municipality is allowed to continue or to use that local standard. It seems to me that this paragraph 3 of the Appendix B was trying to state it's not a mini, it's not a max, and if a local jurisdiction wants to do something different that's not addressed in the code, as long as it's technically sound and there's a basic need, of which who am I to go through and determine whether or not there's a need in that little place compared to a big place down the street. I don't know every place in this state, neither does anybody else. My fundamental question is, are we trying to hone in on the special conditions, which in my opinion could be construed to be a special condition in every little location because everything is in fact different. So my question is, are we stopping or asking this council to not approve unless there's a very distinct special condition of which we have by statute a very open way to interpret that?
Council.
The statute does address more restrictive standards that impose construction standards that are more restrictive than those imposed by the Uniform Code, and it does require a finding by the Code Council that the standards are more restrictive than the Uniform Code and that they are reasonably necessary because of special conditions within that local government. Special conditions does not mean unique. There's no magic number. I can't give you a formula and say if this condition exists in X percent of the state, that it's special, and if it's more than X, it's not special. It's a very open-ended interpretation by the code council. I believe the paragraph you're reading talks about matters that are just not addressed by the Uniform Code. Clearly, carbon monoxide detection is a matter addressed by the Uniform Code. It is one of the matters that is specifically required to be addressed by the Uniform Code. And so, while the Uniform Code doesn't require this little aspect of carbon monoxide detection, and therefore local government is free to adopt a local law under the paragraph that allows them to do something not addressed by the Uniform Code, I think would be an incorrect interpretation of the statute in its entirety. And statutes must be interpreted in their entirety.
Tomato, tomato, I guess that's the whole, I guess that's the point I guess I'm trying to make here, is that there is a difference in whether or not it is, in the eyes of the beholder, whether or not it's special for that area. I think you've answered my question enough. I have a fundamental question and an issue, I guess, with us questioning local municipalities from doing what they believe is right for that area, and in fact, potentially finding that they would not be allowed to use something that's more restrictive than what the standard or what the current code requires. It's just a little bit of a question and a little bit of information out there, and we'll let things go from there.
Fair enough.
If I may, sure. On a point of clarification, I think Tom tend to say something quite interesting in thinking about special. It's the way I think. We just talked about the township of Huron. They may be designated as special because of a unique flooding or natural circumstances. So therefore, we may entertain. What I respectfully heard from the gentleman, fire chiefs, was not a condition that appears to me to be special. It's a situation that exists across the entire country or state or whatever the case. Those gentlemen found a wonderful way or different way to skin a cat or to solve a problem, but their circumstances aren't special. Is that what we were saying? Their circumstances that I've heard do not appear to be special or separate as respects to their circumstance in any other part of the state.
I think that is,
unlike our friends in Huron who may have a flooding problem that may be specific to their locality.
again, special. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's another locality with similar circumstances, they could both be special.
That is
If
true.
the entire state had those circumstances, then that will not be special.
Correct.
That would be an argument for saying that the entire Uniform Code should be amended to
Correct, okay,
apply these
Yes.
standards statewide.
yes.
Anything to add, Nick? No?
Correct.
Okay. Saw Nick shaking his head vigorously, so I figured I'd recognize him. Anyone else?
Bill Tyne in Buffalo.
Hey, Bill, fire away.
Hi, how are you? I think that's really what it comes down to for me, is I haven't seen anything that demonstrates that the conditions in Brookhaven are special. I don't think they need to be unique. I understand that concept, that you can have special conditions in more than one location, but it seems to me that the conditions in Brookhaven are similar to those not only across the state, but as someone else said, across the country. And this is something that if this is an issue that we feel that carbon monoxide detectors should be hooked up to alarm systems, and that should be a code issue. That should be a code issue everywhere. The whole purpose of this is to have a uniform code, so we have the same code in place, not just everywhere in the state, but everywhere in the country. And I haven't seen anything that demonstrates that the conditions in Brookhaven are special and distinctly different than conditions in any other commercial area, non-residential area, anywhere else in the state. And in fact, some of the testimony that was given talked about people disconnecting their smoke detectors in residential structures. And I think that in terms of oversight, there are health inspections. There are all kinds of inspections in restaurants where legal seafoods issue was. I'm sympathetic to the life safety issue, but I just simply don't see what is special about the conditions in Brookhaven.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Tim?
I would counter the point based on testimony heard that they're saying there's, can't quite remember the number, 50 or 90% of their buildings have fire alarm systems, which in my professional practice all over the country in this state, that's not common. That's not what you normally would see. So that, in my opinion, is special, and certainly in my mind qualifies for them to do something different than what the code says.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
But it seems, I think the testimony was also that it's 50% simply because they've been enforcing it for 3 years without having approval as a more restrictive local standard by this council.
Sean?
And just from my viewpoint of being on the council for the several years that I have been on, it has been one of the directives, at least as I have understood, to have a uniform code. And I think this case is a very interesting case because these fire officials have come up with a better mousetrap, as it were, in thinking about safety, but it's not uniform. And I hate to respond with a bureaucratic response, but I think that's what we're responding with, correct. That it's not special, so therefore it doesn't qualify, not to say that their concept in solving this problem isn't an excellent solution. Maybe we need to look at it statewide at some point. I think New York City talked about data relative to the effects or the safety that is gained in this process. But as it stands now, they don't meet the qualifications to be given this, at least from my seat, this exception.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Okay, we've reached the end. Okay, I think the best way to start this is probably to have council read a potential motion based on a summary and recommendation that was made by the division. If the board agrees, then we'll move forward. If the board doesn't agree, then we'll figure out if there's another way we want to go. So, council, everyone should enjoy the 5-page motion that's ahead.
Bear with me. On or about March 25th, 2014, the town board of the town of Brookhaven, the town, enacted local law number 5 of 2014, which requires carbon monoxide detection devices and/or systems in all new and existing non-residential buildings used for occupation. On April 22nd, 2014, the Division of Building Standards and Codes Division received the town's petition relating to local law number 5 of 2014. On or about May 12, 2016, the town board enacted local law number 11 of 2016, which amended certain provisions added by the 2014 local law and added a new article, Roman numeral 30, entitled Requirements for the Installation, Testing, Inspection, and Maintenance of Approved Carbon Monoxide Detection Systems and Devices, to Chapter 30, Paragraph 30, of the Town Code. On June 23, 2016, the division received the town's petition relating to local law number 11 of 2016. I move, 1, that the Code Council determine, pursuant to Executive Law Section 379, Subdivision 1, that the standards for construction imposed by the Town Code Section 30-26, as added by local law number 5 of 2014, are less restrictive than the Uniform Code. 2, that the Code Council find that there are no special conditions prevailing within the town of Brookhaven that make the standards for construction imposed by local law number 5 of 2014 reasonably necessary. 3, that the Code Council find that the standards for construction imposed by local law number 5 of 2014 conform with accepted engineering and fire prevention practices. 4, that the Code Council find that the standards for construction imposed by local law number 5 of 2014 do not conform with the following purposes of Article 18 of the Executive Law. A, the purpose of permitting to the fullest extent feasible use of modern methods, devices, and improvements which suits the process of construction without substantially affecting reasonable requirements for the health, safety, and security of the occupants or users of buildings. And B, the purpose of eliminating restrictive, obsolete, conflicting, and unnecessary building regulations and requirements. 5, that based on the foregoing determination and findings, the Code Council deny the town's request to approve or adopt the standards for construction imposed by local law number 5 of 2014. 6, that the Code Council determine pursuant to Executive Law Section 379, Subdivision 1, that the standards for construction imposed by the following provisions of the Town Code, as added by local law number 11 of 2016, are less restrictive than the Uniform Code. The part of Town Code Section 30-137 that provides that in the event of a conflict between the Uniform Code and the Town Code shall control. Part of Town Code Section 30-175 Subdivision E that permits the Chief Fire Marshal to prescribe the manner of installation of carbon monoxide alarms in certain existing buildings on a case-by-case basis. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph A. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph D, first sentence. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph D, second sentence. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph D, fourth sentence. Town Code Section 30-178, Paragraph B, as a boy. Town Code Section 30-179, Paragraph A, and Town Code Section 30-179, Paragraph B, as a boy. 7, that the Code Council determine pursuant to Executive Law Section 179, Subdivision 1, that the standards for construction imposed by the following provisions of the Town Code, as added by local law number 11 of 2016, are more restrictive than the Uniform Code. The part of Town Code Section 30-173 that requires detection in buildings and structures that are exempted by the Uniform Code. The part of Town Code Section 30-175, Paragraph B as a dog, that requires interconnection of carbon monoxide detection to an existing fire alarm system. Town Code Section 30-175, Paragraph F. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph C. Town Code Section 30-6, Paragraph D as in dog, third sentence. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph E. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph F. Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph G. Parts of Town Code Section 30-122, Paragraph B, that require 1, the operation of all occupant notification devices to be witnessed, 2, circuit supervision, trouble supervisory and alarm conditions, to be witnessed, and 3, receipt of alarm at a central station or supervising station to be verified, and Town Code Section 30-182, Paragraph C. 8, that the Code Council determine pursuant to Executive Law Section 179, Subdivision 1, that the standards for construction imposed by the following provisions of the Town Code, as added by local law number 11 of 2016, are more restrictive than the Uniform Code, but could create an unsafe condition and, therefore, do not appear to conform with accepted engineering practices or with the purposes of Article 18 of the Executive Law. That part of Town Code Section 30-175, Paragraph D, that requires ventilation systems to be shut down upon activation of carbon monoxide detection, and Town Code Section 30-176, Paragraph I. 9, that the Code Council find and determine that there are no special conditions prevailing within the town of Brookhaven that make the standards for construction imposed by local law number 11 of 2016 reasonably necessary. 10, that the code council finds and determine that the standards for construction imposed by local law number 11 of 2016 do not conform with the following purposes of Article 18 of the executive law. A, the purpose of permitting to the fullest possible extent feasible use of modern technical methods, devices, and improvements which tend to reduce the cost of construction without substantially affecting reasonable requirements for health, safety, and security of the occupants or users of buildings. And B, the purpose of eliminating restrictive, obsolete, conflicting, and unnecessary building regulations and requirements. And 11, that based on the foregoing determinations and findings, the Code Council deny the town's request to approve or adopt the standards for construction imposed by local law number 11 of 2016. And if any member of the Code Council would like to do so, I would offer that as a motion that they may wish to.
So moved.
I was going to give a second for that, but okay, thank you, Bill. Is there a second? Mr. Hamlin seconds. Is there any debate on that motion? Hearing none, I'll ask Gerard to call the roll.
Okay. Matt Tebow.
Aye.
Paul Martin.
Aye.
Vincent Rappuschul.
Yes.
Keith Wen.
Yes.
Michael Sabatino.
Yes.
Thomas Lucchesi.
Aye.
Sean Hamlin.
Yes.
Tim DeRusher.
No.
William Tyne.
Yes.
Patrick Dolan.
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli.
Yes.
9 in favor, the motion passes with the quorum.
Yes. Motion passes. I believe it's 10. What's the vote?
9. Let's see. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No?
You get 9 and 2, right?
9 and 2. Right. Yes. Tim and Tom were nay.
Oh,
And
okay. I misunderstood.
Okay.
Got it. 9 and 2. 9 to 2. Okay. Back to our handy agenda. Agenda item 6, MRLS with Town of Summers, local law number 4 of 2016, fire separation between residential dwelling and garage. This is from, we heard about this in our September meeting. Nick's going to refresh our memory, and then we'll move forward.
On October 13th, 2016, the Town of Summers enacted Local Law 4 of 2016, which reinstates the fire-resisting rating requirements that were previously contained in the 2010 Residential Code of New York State. The more restrictive standards relate to the fire resistance rating requirements for the openings between a garage and a residence. The local law requires 45 minutes, whereas the Uniform Code requires 20. The vertical separation between an attached garage and a living space. The local law requires 3/4 hour fire resistance rating or 1 layer of 5/8 inch Type X gypsum board installed on the garage side and 1 layer of 1/2 inch Type X gypsum board installed on the opposite side, whereas the Uniform Code requires not less than 1/2 inch gypsum board or equivalent applied to the garage side. And the local law enacts requirements for horizontal separations between a garage and a living space or its attic. The local law requires 5/8 inch Type X gypsum board whereas the Uniform Code requires half-inch gypsum board or equivalent. These more restrictive standards appear to conform to accepted engineering and fire prevention practices and the purpose of Article 18. The less restrictive standards that were identified by staff at the last co-council meeting were denied by the council. The special conditions as identified by the town are as follows. The town has a 100% volunteer fire service with extensive area to cover, with only 97 members strong, in which 36 are qualified for interior firefighting, operating out of 4 fire stations, having limited water sources and lengthy travel distances. The town has provided a GIS map of the town depicting the fire station locations, water bodies, and water courses. The town provided a copy of the minutes of the October 13th, 2016 public hearing when the local law was adopted. The minutes state that the local law was necessary to reinstate a construction requirement that was lost due to the state code being updated. The local law would maintain a 45-minute separation requirement that existed in the prior state code as opposed to the 20-minute requirement currently in the state code. The assistant building inspector stated that houses currently have a 45-minute separation requirement, and a change would mean the fire department would not be aware of what construction they were entering. Back in September, department staff requested that the town submit additional documentation to demonstrate that fires originating in the garage or vehicle storage area occur more frequently in the town than in other areas of the state. Staff also requested that the town submit documentation on the fire department's response times. The town responded that the fire department response times are within national standards, about 10 to 12 minutes, and that they may have 1 or 2 fires that occurred in garages during the past couple of years. In a November 14, 2017 letter, the town submitted the following additional comments in support of the petition. The sprinkler requirements in the ICC has been removed by the Uniform Code supplement. The more restrictive is not cost prohibitive. Residential garages store combustibles and flammables. For example, automobiles, gasoline, fuel yard, maintenance equipment, and home heating oil tanks. Residential garages do not require smoke, heat, or carbon monoxide detection. New construction materials are inferior, lighter, and less fire resistant than older building materials. There's no requirement that the openings have a self-latching device in addition to being self-closing. Unfortunately, the additional documentation provided by the town are just generalizations that do not appear to support a finding that special conditions are prevalent in the municipality. Are there any questions on the local law or special conditions thus far? We do not have a representative from Summers.
Questions or comments for Nick? Okay. All right. Hearing none, I guess we'll ask Joe to read a potential motion.
I think I'd like to say might be helpful in general. In quite a few people's minds, there's a belief that when the fire sprinklers were added to the 2009 ICC codes, that the separation was made less. And in fact, the ICC codes have had that same separation since the 2000 version. And it didn't change when fire sprinklers were added. In fact, there are a couple of small parts of the provisions in there were actually increased in that period of time. So just that misconception that it was forgotten and that the Code Council was made aware back in May of 2016 or March of 2016 that this provision was going to be allowed to lapse, the New Yorkism, and be according to the ICC codes, and at that time it was accepted.
Before that too, there was a memo to the council in November 2014. November 12th, 2014 memo to the council that identified maybe 30 or so changes that New York State was going to face going forward with adopting the new act codes. So the council was aware of this for a long time now.
Now, I wasn't chair back then, but I guess I'll ask this question. I assume that at that time, in 2014, the division gathered data with regard to response times, number of incidents, damage and loss, costs, et cetera, before they made that recommendation to the council.
I wasn't here, not it.
I wasn't here either.
Okay. I guess I should know answers before I ask questions.
I mean, looking back, there was some discussion. I think it was more looking at what the nationwide, the ICC codes had been doing, and the fact that it was always at this level there. And in fact, in early days, in the codes in New York State, before it was a uniform code, it was 20 minutes door and 30-minute separation. At some point in the late 70s is when the 3/4 hour came in, but I wasn't able to find specific reasons why that was brought in. And I think the other thing is when you looked at the fire statistics, the incidents of fires and deaths in garages are very similar to like your porch compared to kitchens and bedrooms and living rooms, which are not separated from the rest of your house, and it's where the lion's share of fires start, typically cooking equipment, heating equipment, and candles and smoking devices.
Okay. Thank you, Gerard.
You're welcome.
Tom?
Yeah, I believe our goal should be making things safer. The 2010 residential code required 45 minutes. And a few years later, we changed it to IRC, which is 20 minutes. I think our goal should always be making things safer, not less. To me, I do understand statistics. I do go by them a lot. But if this saves one life, it's well worth the additional 25 minutes.
Tom, you make a good point. Tim?
Just so everybody can sort of get in perspective, and my architect friend and other people understand this, but a 30-minute wall is basically half-inch standard drywall on both sides of a set of studs. And that's got to go all the way up to the roof deck, which it's rare in a garage and in a single-family home that we see that from a normal construction standpoint. Going to a 45-minute, you're still using half-inch on each side, but you're using Typex specialized gypsum in that to get a 45-minute rating. The option that seems and was in the prior code is to use 5/8 Typex, one layer on the garage side, which basically gives a finished rating of 20 minutes to the wood stud, plus whatever else is left with. If you're using presumably half-inch drywall, you're going to be well in excess of 45 minutes when you're dealing with that. So what we're talking about here is asking, do we use 5/8 inch instead of half-inch, and do we use Typex instead of regular gypsum wallboard? The wall still has to go up. It still has to be put in place. It still has to be there. So the change, if you will, in what the minutes, it seems like, oh my gosh, we're doubling, we're doing a massive change. In fact, in reality, out in the field is very minor. It's the type that you put in and it's the thickness. So it would seem to be pretty easy to accomplish. I am a proponent, as I stated before, to make everything as uniform as we can, but some jurisdictions are saying that they need to have this now. I think this is something we should look at in the 2018 provisions that we're currently contemplating. But again, a couple of things in front of us. Seems like a big giant change when in fact it's really not when you go out in the field.
Yeah, Tim, you make an excellent point, a point that I was thinking myself when you were speaking and before you were speaking. This might be something that we need to look at in 2018. That's coming up. Obviously, we're going to get presentations from staff later today. I talked to Tom over the weekend about it. I think that it would be a really good idea to have a good data set in front of us before we make any decisions. Certainly, I wouldn't want to see the council move towards a jurisdiction by jurisdiction, town by town approach to this. If it's warranted statewide, then it's warranted statewide. If it's not, then it's not.
Similar to Brookhaven, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Right. So I guess over the next week, our next meeting's what, March 7th, I think it would be good to get that data set. Sorry to put more work on John's staff, but since no one remembers whether we did this, whatever, 3 years ago, I'm sure we did, but since no one remembers it, let's do it again. Let's get response time data, incident time data, damage, loss, injury data, cost differences, and I certainly like to know, I know that we have a lot of jurisdictions, other states that don't have sprinklers. I would like to know what they're doing with regard to these walls, because I think that would be a helpful piece of information as well.
Well, yeah, just something that Gerard's comments made me think about, and that was, through the Pure I codes, this separation has never changed. It's been consistent all the way through. I believe what really is confusing things is that when we went from Title IX and Green Book, New York Code, to the first adoption of an I code, this was one area we deviated from that national model code. In fact, that we kept a legacy component. Then that legacy component went away in future adoptions of the Pure I, or the I code into New York. So that's when it was lost. It wasn't, as he said, lost at the national level in the discussions of the introduction of residential sprinklers into the IRC. And thus, whether or not we should have a conversation on that. But so I just think that would be great if we could put that in front of the council members in some sort of format that they can see that timeline. And the second comment I just want to make is what we were just talking about, in that a firm component of a uniform code. And if this is the good idea, as Sean says, then we really should be taking a look at it, both as we move forward with the 2018 adoption here in New York, and maybe begin to argue this again back at the national level for inclusion into the I code at that level as well.
Any other questions or comments before I ask Joe to read a motion, potential motion?
I just wanted to, one more observation, and I dug into this deeply over the past couple of years where the number of questions is, when we look at the statistics that already ranks fires that start in garages in low, we have to wonder, and I don't know if there's statistics on this, how many of those buildings, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of old stock buildings that have no separation required before the uniform code. How many of those buildings are those kind of buildings with no required separation?
So you're talking building stock pre-80, early 80s?
I was just in a relative's house that has a door with a glass looking into their garage from back in the 30s. Bungalow from the 30s.
Trying to remember the old books, the little yellow ones.
Oh, yeah.
We should go back, so I would suggest that we go back beyond the uniform code to the state construction code, the multiple dwelling code,
I've
one
looked
and two
back
family.
before. That's
Going
the
back,
farthest
okay,
back I
yeah,
could find.
okay, so that's,
And that was the 30-minute and 20-minute
Right.
back then.
Anyone else? Okay, Joe?
On or about October 13th, 2016, the town of Somers, enacted local law number 4 of 2016, the local law, which amended chapter 74 of the town code, the code of the town of Somers, town code, by adding a new subsection E to section 74-11 of the town code. The local law was filed with the Department of State's State Records Unit pursuant to municipal home rule law on October 24, 2016. On or about October 10, 2016, the town supervisor submitted a copy of the local law and a petition relating to the local law to the Code Council pursuant to Executive Law Section 379. On September 28, 2017, the Code Council found and determined, pursuant to Executive Law Section 379, Subdivision 1, the standards imposed by section 74-11E5 of the town code as added by the local law were less stringent and less restrictive than the standards imposed by the Uniform Code, and denied the town's request that the Code Council approve or adopt the standards imposed by section 74-11E5 of the town code. I move as follows. First, I move that the Code Council determine pursuant to Executive Law Section 379-1 that the standards imposed by sections 74-11E1, 74-11E2.1, 74-11E2.2 of the town code as added by the local law are more stringent and more restrictive than the standards imposed by the Uniform Code. Second, I move that the Code Council find pursuant to Executive Law Section 379, Subdivision 2, that there are no special conditions prevailing within the town that make the standards imposed by sections 74-11E1, 74-11E2.1, 74-11E2.2 of the town code as added by the local law reasonably necessary. And third, based on the foregoing, I move that the Code Council deny the town's request to that the Code Council adopt or approve the standards imposed by sections 74-11E1, 74-11E2.1, and 74-11E2.2 of the town code as added by the local law. And again, if somebody would like to make that motion, I offer it for that purpose.
Would anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Made by Paul and Tyne. Is there a second?
Second.
There we go. Mr. Tyne makes the second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Gerard, if you could call the roll.
Matt Tebow.
Aye.
Paul Martin.
Aye.
Vincent Ravachullo.
Yes.
Was that, I'm sorry. Yes. Keith Wen.
Yes.
Michael Sabatino.
Yes.
Thomas Luchesi.
No.
Sean Ham.
Yes.
Timothy Drusher.
No.
William Tyne.
Yes.
Patrick Dolan.
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli.
Yes.
Nine, the motion passes. 9 in favor, 2.
9 in favor and 2 opposed, the motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 7, MRLS for the town of Ogden. Local law number 6 of 2017, fire separation between residential dwelling and garage. Hey.
On September 13th, 2017, the town of Ogden enacted local law 6 of 2017, which reinstates the fire resisting rating requirements that were previously contained in the 2010 Residential Code of New York State. I'm going to keep it short here. Ogden enacted the exact same local standards that Summers did, including less restrictive provisions. The less restrictive provision, from the best of my memory, was regarding their flood provisions. They failed to reference the Uniform Code supplement instead of citing straight IRC. The more restrictive standards appear to conform with accepted engineering and fire prevention practices and the purpose of Article 18. The special conditions, as identified by the town, are as follows. The town board did find and determine that the present Uniform Code does not provide adequate fire protection between attached garages and the private dwellings to which they are attached. The board did further find and determine that reducing the statutory requirements for fire rating for entry doors from attached garages to private dwellings substantially increases the risk of fire spreading to the private dwelling. The town's petition to the Code Council included minutes of the September 13th, 2017 town board meeting. The town believes that the reduction in fire resistance rating between a dwelling and an attached garage is an error that was intended to be fixed by the state. The law was intended to correct the error. So again, this is what Sheriff was pointing out before, that the Code Council, this information was presented to the Code Council, and you actively went forward with this provision. And it seems like towns are just scrambling, trying to catch up, thinking that, oh my God, I forgot something. So back in November, staff requested that the town submit additional documentation to demonstrate that fires originating in a garage or vehicle storage area occur more frequently in the town than in other areas in the state. Staff also requested that the town submit documentation on the fire department's response times. The town responded that the fire department response times are within the national standards, about 10 to 12 minutes. Subsequent correspondence with the town indicated that the total number of garage fires in an attached garage during a 5-year period was about 12 to 15, whereas the total number of fires during this period was about 25. The division requested documentation that was used to generate the 12 to 15 range. However, none was provided. So based on these estimates, the total number of garage fires that originate in a garage attached to a dwelling is somewhere between 48 and 60%. Do you have any questions up to this point? I believe there's a representative for the town at the Buffalo location. Is that correct? Buffalo?
Go ahead, say it again.
Yes.
Who am I speaking to?
This is Joe Muniz, representing the town of Ogden as the fire marshal.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, does the council have any questions for me before I pass it off?
Okay, hearing none. Mr. Muniz, if you'd like to make a presentation.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. As I said, my name is Joe Muniz. I'm here representing the town of Ogden as the fire marshal. For those that don't know, Ogden is located in a western suburb to the city of Rochester, and we have a population of roughly 20,000 people. I come before you today with 25 years of service in the fire service. I was fire chief of the Spencerport Fire District, and I was also president of that fire association. And I'm also currently a career firefighter with the Ridge Road Fire District and have been so for 15 years. Today I'm coming before you to ask for your adoption of our local law 6 of 2017. As stated, the law reinstates the fire resistance rating requirement that was in recent printings of the Fire Code of New York State, dating back to 1952 and as recently as the 2010 Residential Code of New York State. Our local law reestablishes the separation of the garage from the home with a 3/4 hour rated door and the 5/8 type X drywall to be placed on the garage side of the wall assembly. The law was originally proposed and drafted by Patrick Smith, who's our town code enforcement official, then went off for review by the town attorney, and as you heard, was unanimously approved by our town board. As stated in the document that was presented to the council, we were not able to provide definitive run numbers and pinpoint response times by the time given by the council. Our town is somewhat unique. We are protected by 3 100% volunteer fire protection districts. They include the Spencerport Fire District, the Chili Volunteer Fire Department, and the Churchville Volunteer Firemen's Association, Incorporated. At the time of the request, they simply could not gather the exact data requested by the council within the time frame given. Furthermore, they found the NFIRS reporting system did not allow agencies to search for specific areas of origin within the dispatch or situation found data points, and to ask the volunteer chiefs to sort through thousands of response incidents within the time frame given was not obtainable. Information that was found was that the average response times for a first due engine to a structure fire was approximately 10 to 12 minutes with a crew of 3 to 4 firefighters. The time to adequately have enough firefighters on scene to make entry and perform all of the functions critical for life safety of the residents and firefighters would surely be longer, thus giving the fire even more time to spread into the residents. A statement referenced in the document before you states the town must show that it is unique and therefore could have this law approved. I would reference that our town was not unique from most municipalities until the adoption of the 2015 International Code. The new code has now forced new home construction, which is greatly on the rise in our community, to be unique from their neighbors. With the improved financial status of today's homeowners, we have seen an influx of remodeling, which does involve garages and the addition of sleeping areas over the garages. They are now less protected from fire by more than half the time from their neighbors. Now, as the 2015 International Code is adopted, the responding fire departments have less than half the amount of time to respond, assemble, rescue, and extinguish a fire in a home. We've had open dialogue with the home builders within our community and have found this would pose minuscule to no financial hardship on them or the end user. Our cost analysis showed, based on using big box stores such as Lowe's and Home Depot's current pricing as of Friday, that the increased cost for the drywall was 5 cents per sheet, and the cost of a 90-minute fire-rated door was an increase of $52. So based on an average home, the increase would be $53 using 20 sheets of drywall and one entry door to the home from the garage. The cost for labor to secure, tape, mud the drywall shows no increase, and the cost to hang the door shows no increase, as all these items would be done regardless of material. We have been open and upfront with our builders about the recent code changes through the International Fire Code and our request to the State Council to return to the previous New York State standard for fire separation within the garage and residence. To this date, we have not had any builders dispute the need to return to the previous standard. The sole purpose for requesting this more restrictive code is for our residents' and visitors' life safety. With the modern building construction, the lack of residential sprinklers, and the amount of combustible and flammable products stored within the home, and specifically the garage areas, we felt that this was imperative. The request for adoption is also to allow the residents, visitors, and their children the ample time to evacuate their homes while also giving the fire agencies time to respond, assemble, and extinguish. I'd just like to thank you for your time and consideration. This is a very important topic for us, and we hope you find it favorable for the town of Ogden. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Muniz?
Just one comment. Chief, I think you made a tremendous argument for doing this statewide. And I would encourage you to come forth as we work through the future into the adoption of the 2018 code, make that pitch once again for us, the council, to consider doing this statewide.
Thank you.
I fully agree with Chief Martin. You made an excellent case. You ticked off some of the questions that I just asked the division to look at over the next couple of months. So I agree. You made a great case to do this statewide.
Pat Dolan from New York City. I totally agree with the chief. Just by his knowledge and background and what he presented to us as a council, I really truly believe that starting for next year, we have to put that on the agenda statewide.
Is there any other questions or comments for the chief?
Yeah, just comment in general. Once again, I think we are recognizing it is a problem. For us to deny this when we know it's a problem, even if it's a couple months, I think we're doing we're missing our duties. We know it's a problem, we're recognizing it. To go along like the last motion, if we deny this, I think we're definitely remiss.
Now, there is a difference between this and the last motion. The chief has laid out some special conditions that we could consider as special conditions.
Correct.
Keith, I saw you reaching. Do you have a question or comment? No?
No, I was just turning the microphone off.
Okay. It's like riding a bucking bronco some days. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? I guess I want to put this to the board. before a potential motion. Is this a situation where the council would be more comfortable pushing this to a future meeting? While we consider a statewide approach? Or is this something we should undertake right now as we did with Summers? Decide whether there are special conditions and move forward.
I would like to make motion table this to next meeting.
Okay? Is there a second of that motion?
May I be heard on one
Sure.
minor point? Remember that this local law still has in it an unaddressed provision dealing with flood elevation that was similar to the one in the town of Summers. And in the town of Summers, that part of the local law was denied by the code council at the meeting. It is less restrictive. So, as we did with Summers, it would be possible to bifurcate this and to act on the less restrictive version of flood elevation and postpone the determination until the next meeting with respect to the fire separation aspect of the local law. That's what we did. Rather than let the local law in its entirety continue to be in effect, you may want to consider denying the less restrictive portion today.
Yeah, we'll modify my motion based on council's recommendation.
Okay. So the modified motion is before the council. Is there a second? Okay. Hearing none, then that motion fails. We're shaking. Okay. We have a
I'll
second.
second the motion.
Okay. All right, we have a motion before the council to postpone until the next meeting with regard to these fire separation provisions. However, we would move forward today and deny.
We'll make a motion.
All right. Yeah, I put the cart before the horse. We would then move forward on the flood provisions. I guess the best thing here is Gerard, you call the roll, we'll go through, we'll figure out if that passes, and then we'll come back and fill in. You want to do this on a voice? I can do that. Council advises I can do this on a voice vote.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion as presented by Mr. Lucchese and as amended by council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Any opposed? Okay, the fire separation provisions are off the table until the March meeting when council, or when the division will come back to us with more information about whether this is a statewide issue or not, and we can consider it then.
them are going to come back.
Now I'm going to ask council, I think, to try and put together a motion on the fly with regards to the flood provisions. Sorry, Joe.
On or about October 13, 2017, the town of Ogden, the town, enacted local law number 6 of 2017, the local law, which amended chapter 210 of the code of the town of Ogden, the town code, by adding a new section 210-52.2 to the town code. On or about October 11, 2017, the town supervisor submitted a copy of the local law and a petition relating to the local law to the code council pursuant to executive law section 379. I move as follows. The code council determined pursuant to executive law section 379 subdivision 1 that the standards imposed by section 210-52.2E as added by the local law are less stringent and less restrictive than the standards imposed by the Uniform Code. And based on the foregoing determination, I move that the Code Council deny the town's request that the Code Council adopt the standards proposed by section 210-52.2E of the town code as added by the local law. And I would offer that as a motion if some member of the Code Council would like to make it.
I have someone that's going to make that motion. Okay. Tom makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Tim seconds. Okay, I just want to clarify. This is basically the exact same provision as that we denied regarding Summers, right, language-wise, all right? Nick?
Yes, it's verbatim, they copied it from the 2010 residential code.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, is there any other questions, comments, et cetera, on that motion? Hearing none. Gerard, we call the roll.
Matt Kiva.
Aye.
Paul Martin.
Aye.
Vince Reptulo.
Yes.
Keith Wen.
Yes.
Michael Sabatino.
Yes.
Tom Luchesi.
Yes.
Sean Hamlin.
Yes.
Tim DeRusher.
Yes.
William Tyne.
Yes.
Patrick Dolan.
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli.
Yes.
11 yes.
Yes. That motion carries. Gerard, I know that Mr. Munez is here, but can you please let the town know that we knocked out those provisions, but that the fire provisions are still under consideration? Thank you, Chief. Munez, we would actually like your assistance as we move forward through the next 3 months doing the research with regard to this.
Okay, I'd be more than happy to. Thank you guys for your time and for entertaining moving this forward statewide.
Thank you.
I just want to have an understanding. We're looking at the special conditions as identified by the town and the testimony provided by the chief and comparing that to, I guess, the state in general and to the nation in general, which the codes are based on. Is that correct?
See, I don't know if I did. Yes, you're right.
I'm trying to understand what I'm
No,
bringing back.
that's what you're doing. I mean, I wouldn't want to look at the municipality. I think the chief can be helpful with you with regard to that. But I mean, I think we really need data with locally. Yes,
Understand.
I mean, the cost is $53, then it's $53. But if it's, could be different else.
I just want to know what I'm bringing back. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Question.
Sure.
May I ask a question?
No, absolutely.
So the data that's coming back is not only cost, but also data on fires originating in garages?
Yeah, I would like, I'll just.
From the local, state, and also national level?
Yes. I would like, I'll just clarify so that it's on the record. I know John's heard me, but I would like response time data, state and national. I would like number of incidents data, state and national, if we can get that information. I think Paul might be able to help us with that. Damage, injury, loss data, state, national, cost difference data. I think state's probably the most important there. And then I think it's important for the council to hear what our sister states are doing for those states that do not have sprinklers, because I think that's the argument here, is that we don't. So we should have the thicker wall, or the wall that can hold back the fire, that can hold back the fire for longer. So I think we should know how they're handling that circumstance, because if they've also taken the IRC 20 minutes and they're, I think that's interesting, and they don't have sprinklers, I think that's interesting.
Thank you.
We can do that.
Right? Okay. We've got through 4, we've got 1 to go. MRLS for the Village of Great Neck, local law number 5 of 2017. Certain construction prohibited. You again? You've had your caffeine pills today. All right.
On March 21st, 2017, the Village of Great Neck enacted Local Law 5, 2017, which restricts the height of multifamily dwellings and existing buildings containing truss-type pre-engineered wood and timber construction to 2 1/2 stories. The local law is very short, it's only 2 sentences, I'll read the whole thing. Notwithstanding any state or local law, rule, or regulation to the contrary, truss-type pre-engineered wood and timber construction shall not be permitted in any multifamily dwelling over 2 1/2 stories in height. Buildings featuring truss-type pre-engineered wood or timber construction and existing as of the date of this enactment may not be enlarged to greater than 2 1/2 stories in height. These more restrictive standards generally appear to conform to accepted engineering and fire prevention practices, but not to the purpose of Article 18. The town provided us with about 6 special conditions. If you have the analysis with you, it's on page 5 and 6. I'm not going to go through all the special conditions, go through the highlights. The village recently learned of several high-profile fires at large multifamily developments in New York and New Jersey in which wood construction methods were used. While the construction methods used in those developments may have been permitted by law, there is little doubt that the severity of the damage to those developments was attributable, in whole or in part, to the use of wooden construction methods. The division staff believes that high-profile fires occurring elsewhere in New York State and in neighboring states does not constitute special conditions prevailing in the village. The village has not provided any information to substantiate the claim that the severity of damage to the building fires that occurred elsewhere in New York State and in New Jersey is attributable in whole or in part to wooden construction methods. Also unique to Great Neck is that the village is seeing a sharp and significant increase in the number of residents seeking walkability to shops and other businesses on Middle Neck Road and Steamboat Road, the main thoroughfares in the village. It is therefore only a matter of time before the village starts receiving applications for high-density multifamily developments on Middle Neck and Steamboat Roads. The village has already approved one large multifamily development at 240 East Shore Road in Great Neck. The development utilizes truss-type and pre-engineered wood construction and will consist of 191 residential units when completed. The division believes that this appears to be more of a zoning issue and not unique to Great Neck. The apparent risks associated with wooden construction methods in high-density multifamily developments is too great, particularly so in the village of Great Neck, where those uses will be constructed in close proximity to one another and in already congested zoning districts. Therefore, after consulting the village staff, the board decided to enact legislation to limit the scale of buildings featuring wooden construction methods. The village has not specifically identified the, how they call it, the apparent risks associated with wooden construction methods in high-density multifamily developments where those uses will be constructed in close proximity to one another. Furthermore, the village has not identified how the Uniform Code does not currently address these perceived risks. Ultimately, the documentation submitted by village does not appear to substantiate the claim that special conditions are prevailing within the local government. I don't believe there's a representative from the village at any location today. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Now, we received a communication, an email from them yesterday, or Gerard did, I should say.
That is correct. Yeah, late in the day yesterday.
And that was sent around to the members. It was late in the day. Summarize it fairly quickly.
Summarize it. I really read it.
It was pretty much a summary of what they had sent before.
Yes.
I don't think there was much new.
I don't think there was new information in there. It was just reiteration. They believe that, I guess the current code is unsafe in this respect, and they wanted to have additional safety provisions, specifically restricting the height of buildings using truss-type pre-engineered wood construction.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments with regard to this more restrictive local standard? Okay. Hearing none. I'll ask Joe to read a potential motion based on staff's analysis and recommendation.
On or about March 21st, 2017, the Village of Great Neck enacted local law number 5 of 2017, which added section 237-1 of the code of the Village of Great Neck, the Village Code, which restricts the height of multifamily dwelling and existing buildings that contain truss-type pre-engineered wood and timber construction to 2 1/2 stories. On or about October 5th, 2017, the mayor of the village submitted a certified copy of the local law and a petition related to the local law to the Code Council pursuant to Section 379 of the Executive Law. I move as follows. First, that the Code Council determine, pursuant to Executive Law Section 79, Subdivision 1, that the standards imposed by Section 37-1 of the Village Code as added by the local law, are more stringent and more restrictive than the standards imposed by the Uniform Code. Second, I move that the Code Council find, pursuant to Executive Section 379, Subdivision 2, that there are no special conditions prevailing in the village that make the standards imposed by Section 237-1 of the Village Code, as added by the local law, reasonably necessary. Third, I move that the Code Council find, pursuant to Executive Law Section 379, Subdivision 2, that the standards imposed by Section 237-1 of the Village Code, as added by the local law, accepted engineering and fire prevention practices. Fourth, I move that the Code Council find, pursuant to Executive Law Section 379, Subdivision 2, that the standards imposed by Section 237-1 of the Village Code, as added by the law, do not conform with the following purposes of Article 18 of the Executive Law. 1, permit to the fullest extent possible the use of modern technical methods, devices, and improvements which tend to reduce the cost of construction without substantially affecting reasonable requirements for the health, safety, and security of the occupants or users of the buildings. 2, eliminate restrictive, obsolete, conflicting, and unnecessary building regulations and requirements which tend to increase unnecessarily construction costs or retard unnecessarily the use of new materials, or provide unwarranted preferential treatment to types or classes of material or products or methods of constructions. And 5th, based on the foregoing determination and findings, I move that the Code Council deny the village request that the Code Council adopt or approve the standards imposed by Section 237-1 of the Village Code as added by the local law. And as a member of the Code Council would like to make that motion, I walk it for that purpose.
Is there any member that wants to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Casey makes the motion. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mark. Okay, is there any discussion on the motion?
Just a quick little discussion point. It appears this is I guess an attempt to go through and start looking at the fire problem where we have highly congested city and or urban areas with wood frame construction, specifically the construction types. Taking a step back in time, provisions for fire limits that in previous years and going back hundreds of years, we prohibited, previous building codes prohibited the use of full wood frame construction in very congested downtown areas, essentially, fire limits A, that was brought about as a condition of burning down blocks at a time. We have recently seen the same type of very large-scale fires attributed to wood frame construction. I will leave it at that, particular types in these areas. So I think the intent of the village here is to address an issue that is a fire issue in build-up urban areas. I'm not sure this specifically deals with it in the fullest way possible, but it's something I believe the fire service and other risk managers are looking at right now, and it's something that's I think we're going to see very soon. On how this is going to be dealt with is to be determined, but it's an item that the village wants to do, and I think overall it's a good move. But we'll have to see what happens in other areas. It's coming back to an old lesson, and you'd think we learned from 100 years ago.
Also, I'd like to make a comment. Michael Sabatino. As you know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a structure fire at the Avalon complex in New Jersey. And recently in Yonkers, we had a fire with a new project that was being developed with wood construction. Fortunately, it had not been completed and there were no residents involved. And I know in Westchester County, there was a fire in a single-family home with these types of wood trusses that resulted in the death of some of the members of a family. So I concur with my colleague who just spoke that we have to be very mindful of this type of construction going forward. And I noticed also in this particular case in Yonkers, the main wood structure or the panels that were used was the material that's, I'm not sure if I have the right term, I call it faux wood, where it's composite, which has glue in it and formaldehyde. And having witnessed that fire, I would say within 30 minutes the whole structure was involved. So I think this is something that we have to definitely look at.
Statewide.
I would encourage it statewide.
Chief, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I'll just ask this question because I know you're involved with the ICC, and so are a bunch of our people. But I guess I'll ask for the group. Is this something that's being considered at the ICC level with regard to density?
With a terrible pun, I would say it's a very hot topic at the national level.
Right. Okay. All right, that's very interesting. All right. Is there any other discussion on the motion that's before us? All right, hearing none, I'll ask Gerard to call the roll.
Okay. Matt Tebow.
Aye.
Paul Martin.
Aye.
Vince Repetullo.
Yes.
Keith Wen.
Yes.
Michael Sabatino.
Yes.
Tom Lucia.
Yes.
John Hamlin.
Yes.
Tim DeRusher.
Yes.
William Tyne.
Aye.
Patrick Dolan.
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli.
Yes.
11 yes.
11 votes for yes. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to next agenda item number 9. This is the summary of assessment of the 2018 I-codes. We're going to bring up staff briefly on a code-by-code basis to walk us through what they're looking at with regard to the differences between the 2018 as proposed by ICC and the 2015 that is currently in effect with New York changes. So I'm going to start with the building code and ask Assistant Director Brian Tollison to talk.
Good afternoon. As Matt mentioned, we're beginning to look at the 2018 codes, how it's different from the 2015 codes, and the impact it might have in terms of our state. I came up with 4 things I want to go over this afternoon on the building code itself. We're going to go through all the codes briefly. The first one is, I'll give you a picture. If you consider a mixed-use building, say a 1-story building that's retail and has a storage occupancy, the code now would require an occupancy separation, typically of about 2 hours. The code also now allows you to take that separation away, provided you apply to the whole building the most restrictive fire and life safety provisions. Okay. In the 2018 code, it's made a bit of a tighter requirement, and the requirement surrounds the absence of a sprinkler system. Now, what happens in design many times with a mixed-use building, a developer or designer can look at the allowable fire areas and look at the triggers by which that fire area would have to have a sprinkler system. And 2018 code is saying now that if you place a fire barrier to separate those occupancies for the purpose of not installing a sprinkler system, that fire barrier has to be 3 hours. Okay. If you look back through the codes and look at the different occupancies, it's basically an increase of 1 hour on average. Most fire separations between occupancies are 1 or 2 hours. there are occasions where there are 3. But the 2018 code is saying when you're segregating a building or compartmentalizing a building in its fire area to stop or to not install a sprinkler system, that fire barrier must be 3 hours. That was one of the more notable ones that I found so far. The next one is with standpipes. The current code requires standpipes in buildings when the vertical distance between the fire apparatus access and the highest or the very lowest floor, if you're considering a below grade, below ground building, if that vertical distance exceeds 30 feet, you have to have a standpipe system. The 2018 code actually sets a trigger for a standpipe system at 4 stories. So that would be 4 stories above grade or below grade. So again, in that underground building scenario, 4 levels below that fire department access, you would be triggering the presence of the standpipe system. Relating that back to today, you could have a 4-story building that's 29 feet 10 inches from that floor to the ground and not be triggering the standpipe system, where the 2018 code says at that 4th story you have to include it. Switching to a structural issue, I know live loads on decks have been an issue in the past, and currently the IBC says if you have a deck, the deck load has to be commensurate with the occupancy it's serving. So if you have a business occupancy and the code requires a 50 pound per square foot live load, if you go out to a balcony on that same occupancy, you'd be looking at essentially that same live load. In the 2018 code, you are required to increase the deck live load by 50% from the occupancy it's serving, and there is a cutoff at 100 pounds per square foot. So basically, it's increasing the live loading of the deck. Personal commentary on that: a lot of the deck failures that I've researched, the majority of the deck failures are with the connections, not necessarily with the loadings themselves. So I don't know if we would be looking at just the addition of the load and not necessarily be a solution to a problem that exists where the connections are an issue that may have to be brought to the international codes through a code change proposal. The last one for the building code that I want to present is with firewalls. Now, just to give you a brief, if you're not familiar with what a firewall does, a firewall is a vertical wall that separates 2 occupancies to a degree that they can be considered individual buildings. And the code basically says that that firewall has to be sustainable through a burnout on one of those 2 occupancies. Those provisions have remained. The addition is the 2018 code is now saying that the firewall has to have a lateral load resistance of at least 5 pounds per square foot. Again, it's a specific requirement that they're bringing to the code. Prescriptive, we'll say, is a minimum. Is it a big impact? Not necessarily, in my opinion, but it's something that's noteworthy because I think most firewalls are designed with the belief that they could be an exterior wall and have to support wind, seismic loads, and possibly roof loads. So, but it was something interesting that is found in the IBC. I'm going to be back in a few minutes to talk about the existing building code, and I think what's a similar thread I'm seeing with the IBC and the IEBC is the fact that structural loads are becoming a little bit more prescriptive and a little bit more specific. And I'll describe that more because it seems to be more relevant with the IEBC than the IBC. Okay? Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Actually, before you sit, do you want to just keep going, or do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Sure.
And the way these are stapled together, it is now.
They are.
Yeah.
This is great. The IEBC, just have to reshuffle here a little bit. First of all, there's a bit of a reshuffling of the IEBC from what we have now to what we will see in 2018. When it comes to repairs, relocations, structural live loads, and accessibility provisions, you'll find that the 2018 IEBC treats these topics the same. Today, you can navigate through the different compliance paths in the IEBC, and you can find small variations in the requirements. And what's the 2018 is basically pulling out topics that are subject to all methods. They're saying, you know, for accessibility, for structural requirements, for repairs, and what was the other one I mentioned? Relocations. Those provisions, regardless of your compliance path, here's your minimum requirements. I'm going to focus on the structural ones. Just in my experience with the division, most of our technical support questions come with structural considerations in applying the IEBC. And the 2018 IEBC is starting to put more requirements for snow loading, for wind loading, and live loading. I'll talk to snow loading first. If you have, in the 2018 IEBC, if you have a roof failure, the repair of that roof failure, if it is due to a snow loading effect, requires that repair to be in compliance with the IBC, not with the load time of construction. Just 1 second. So a repair in the 2015 codes basically says you can use the existing or the loads at the time of construction if a dangerous condition isn't created. So one could argue today there's a roof failure, but I'm going to use the existing or the load that it was originally designed for, and we should be good. The 2018 code is saying no, you have to comply with the IEBC or the IUC, Chapter 16 structural provisions. Another interesting snow requirement is the IEBC is requiring you to look at your neighbors, your neighboring buildings within 20 feet of your roof to see if your modifications would negatively impact your neighbor's roof. So drift snow loads, aerodynamic shade, drifting of snow loads. If you have an adjacent building within 20 feet, you have to consider that adjacent building and its impact. Haven't dove too deeply into the analysis of that, but it's something I found in the IEBC. Probably the most complicated structural provision is the seismic loading. The seismic loading has always been in the IEBC, and trying to figure out the appropriate way to brace a parapet wall or to brace a unreinforced masonry wall or connecting it to a roof system is a challenge. And especially taking a critical scenario is almost if you have an essential facility like a police station, firehouse, they're getting an upgrade, they're getting an addition, it could be very challenging to the scope of that project and the cost of that project, the implications of complying with the seismic requirements of the IEBC. One of the code change proposals that I'm personally considering at the IEBC level, at the ICC level, is when you're in the, I guess I'm throwing out a potential solution, if you're seeing what I'm saying to be a problem. When you assess a building using the existing building code, the one thing it kind of gives you some leeway on is the construction type. It doesn't, it allows you to declare a construction type. And what I found in some of the technical support work I've done, a lot of smaller buildings that are unreinforced masonry or of, type 4 construction actually can qualify as a type 5 or a wood frame building. And so then the options of providing enhanced structural resistance to a roof system with some extra walls, declaring that a type 5 building actually opens up a lot of solutions to the structural engineer for that type of a project. So, and it's unfortunate that the IEBC doesn't kind of give you that clue. I guess if you're, unless you're a savvy user, you may not find that. So that's all I have. And unless there are any questions, I'll step aside and let the next staff member talk. No?
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on the list is the residential code. Mr. Kevin Dewar-Clark is going to give us a brief on it.
So the list you guys have in front of you has about 40+ items on it, so obviously we're not going to go through every single detailed one. Right now we have a couple of highlights. I won't be looking at energy, mechanical, fuel gas, or plumbing. I think Gary's going to take a look at those. The first item I wanted to look at or talk about was items 1 and 7, and they're basically aimed at providing some exceptions for buildings that are equipped with sprinkler systems. Emergency escape and rescue openings are no longer required in a basement sleeping room, provided 2 means of egress are provided in the basement in the form of either two full egress components or 1 egress component within the basement area to begin with. Previously, you had to have 1 in every sleeping area. In addition, mezzanines are now permitted to be up to half of the floor area as opposed to 1/3 of the floor area. Again, but this is focused specifically on buildings equipped with sprinkler systems. The next item would be related to items 2, 3, and 12. There's this push for tiny homes, I guess, all over the nation. So these items are kind of in there to address this new tiny home phenomenon. They provide a definition of tiny homes as dwellings 400 square feet or less, and Appendix Q really provides a lot of exceptions, or some exceptions for buildings that meet this definition, such as they have slightly lower ceiling heights, they have smaller egress dimensions from egress from loft areas. They've also extended outside of Appendix Q, they've extended items 2 and 3, alternating tread devices and ship ladders can now be used as part of the means of egress for lofts, mezzanines, and similar areas of 200 square feet or less. So those things are really kind of focused on this tiny home issue that's been coming up more and more. So I think it's something that we definitely need to look into. Items 4 and 5 for carbon monoxide and smoke detection. With advancements in technologies, there's now the ability to have wirelessly interconnected devices. So they've removed the provision for smoke detectors in alterations to not have to be hardwired, and they've also required that carbon monoxide systems be hardwired. And again, interconnected, even though they're not hardwired, because you could wirelessly interconnect them. The next one would be number 8, would be solar provisions for rooftop solar panels. I believe the IRC that we had originally adopted in 2015 didn't have rooftop access pathways in it. So we did adopt some provisions within the supplement. The new 2018 code has brought that back in. It is in there, so I think we'll have to take a look at that and kind of review that against our supplement information, determine whether it's the supplement information we need to keep or go with the 18 provisions. The last one I had here on here was for decks, number 11, 507. Section 507 was kind of new for 2015, specific information for exterior decks. In 2018, they've really expanded upon that whole chapter, and I think they're realigning it with the American Wood Council's prescriptive deck guide. And basically it adds a lot of things, footings and foundations and more span tables, connections and things like that that haven't previously been in the code. I think it's something that many people use. They use the American Wood Council prescriptive deck guide, and so I think it's going to be very helpful. It's something I think we definitely need to take a look at to make sure it aligns with what we want.
Are there any questions, Kevin? Okay, hearing none, thank you. Next one up is the plumbing, mechanical, and fuel gas code. Mr. Draver. Gary.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to provide just a list of revisions for the plumbing, fuel gas, and mechanical code, and also the plumbing, fuel gas, and mechanical code requirements chapters for the residential code, along with a little bit about the electrical requirements. Just in general terms, most of the requirements across the board for these codes are basically modifications to existing language, maybe to clarify some language, or to just to modify it to include maybe common practices and so on, or maybe a particular type of material that's new or has been tested, and we can look at the characteristics of it and be able to apply a particular use. Just to highlight, in the plumbing code, one of the changes is for the table 403.1, which is the table that's used to determine the minimum number of fixtures for a particular space or a building. It's been modified. It takes away the column that gives the occupancy classification, and what it does is it actually describes the spaces. That portion of the table is left in there. So the requirements are being applied basically on how you're using the spaces in the building. The other thing about that table is that there's a new section that just for gaming spaces, assembly spaces used for gaming or casino type of applications, where there's a specific numbers for fixtures in those types of spaces. One of the changes that's been made is I guess it's been a traditional type of application. It's about drainage pipe in food areas for eating or preparing, and basically it would be talking about horizontal sanitary drainage pipes in the ceiling in those areas that's traditionally been prohibited from having being applied in those areas, and that's been taken away. And the idea behind that is that you're more apt to have contamination in those areas from something else. The code is assuming that the pipes aren't leaking, and basically the odds of the pipes leaking are less than getting contamination from someplace else. Also, 713 in the plumbing code deals with healthcare facilities, and because those types of facilities, the plumbing requirements are regulated both federally and on state levels. They've just eliminated their section on sanitary drainage and just kind of basically bowed to the federal and state requirements that address those issues. Just a couple things for the mechanical code. They have modified the definition of commercial cooking appliances in our current code. When we talk about commercial cooking appliances, they actually have descriptions of certain equipment, and they have taken that list of equipment out in recognition of the fact maybe that it's too limiting, or it doesn't apply to all different circumstances, so it's kind of misleading and doesn't work with other requirements in code. So that has been changed. There's also requirements that are new for phenolic ducts, which is ductwork that's not metallic. It's a insulation material that's embedded between or sandwiched between two metal foil kinds of applications. And it's a lightweight kind of product, and they've included language for that to be used within certain applications. So that's been added. There's also some language that's been changed for ductwork, in which it would be the button lock joints or snap lock joints. That's a little bit different than what we have in our code right now. And it's for situations where the seams are located outside of the conditioned joint or conditioned areas. There's also new language for high volume diameter fans. There's a standards to be met for those fans, and I think that's pretty much it for example for the mechanical and fuel gas. One of the items is that the ICC has changed their language for CSST used. They have language that's just applying to the original type with the yellow jacketed material. They have language on bonding jumpers and arc resistant CSST. It's not consistent with the language on the preliminary review. It's not consistent with the language that we have in our supplement. That's New York State language. So probably further comparison is required for that. Shut-off valves for fuel gas, the requirement that they be located so that there's access to them. It's now considered that if it's a movable type of appliance, a range or another appliance that can be moved out of the way, that a shut-off that would be located behind that is readily accessible for those applications. Another item is plastic venting, and that's kind of a continuation of a situation where you have higher efficiency fuel gas furnaces where they can vent into plastic pipe or plastic materials. There's always been a question of which materials was appropriate. And now what the language says is that the plastic venting material be labeled by the appliance manufacturer, or it has to meet the traditional UL standard 1738, which was just for any materials that are used for venting. In the residential code, there are chapters for same topics, mechanical, plumbing code, and fuel gas code. There's just chapters. It's limited. Most of the general requirements are included in the residential code. The changes that were made to the larger documents. But there's a few things to be highlighted here that maybe weren't included in the larger document because they're specific to the residential type of occupancies. One thing is dryer exhaust, a 4-inch diameter dryer exhaust. The code is requiring that you provide the space if it's concealed within the wall that doesn't crush the pipe or put it out around. You have that, maintain that full 4-inch diameter. So if you think about a 3.5-inch common stud, 2x4 stud wall, you don't have the full 4 inches, so something else is going to have to, you don't need to go larger or, bump it out, whatever it happens to be, but the language says that you can't push that 4-inch diameter out around. Commercial cooking appliances have been prohibited for use in residential occupancies. The language has now been changed to say it's okay to use them in residential occupancies as long as it's designed by a licensed engineer. The code allows for the testing of PEX, water supply piping, as long as it's okay with the manufacturer of the piping. That's been a topic that's been discussed quite a bit as far as whether air testing is appropriate for different materials that pipes are constructed of. Bathtub overflows are no longer required for bathtub. A water hammer is required where you have quick closing valves. This language has always been in the plumbing code, and I think it's just been carried over and put into the residential code. Probably just because we're using different materials in residential buildings now. Saddle type fittings for water distribution are prohibited at this point, so if you have something where the saddle is going to tap into the side of the pipe and create an additional line. There's new language for solvent cement transition between different types of plastic pipe. They have developed new solvent cement to be used, and there's a couple different sections that address that. Just for the electric, the new reference is the 2017 NFPA 70, and for the residential requirements, just a few new things coming in. It's going for a minimum of 120 amp circuit for an attached or a detached garage. And you can't have any outlets attached to that circuit. It has to be dedicated to the garage. You can't have something, say, in your house if it's an attached garage, an outlet in the hallway or something like that tied to that circuit. It talks about location of receptacles in garages, and again, they look at the bays. Possibly if you have a 2 or 3 bay garage, having one receptacle in each bay, and where they can be located height-wise. And they're also stating that ground fault circuit interrupter outlets not required for lighting in the crawl space. That's about it.
Thanks, Gary. Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, thank you, Gary. Lee Russell, Fire Code.
Sorry about my slow speed. I got a bad wheel bearing. I got an appointment with a mechanic to get fixed next week, so life's good.
Been there.
Good afternoon, council members. I am here to give you the official report on the 2018 changes to the International Fire Code. As you can imagine, with most code updates, there are several hundred changes. I've highlighted about 61 of them that we've given you in the document that was provided earlier. I'm just going to go through and pick a few of those apart. The majority of the changes that you're going to see if you went through the entire book are clarification issues, minor issues, a lot of adjustment to make code language match between the building code and fire code, which is always a good thing when you can get codes that say the same thing and agree with each other. A few of the other items, if you want to follow along in your on your list there, item number 3 is one of the first ones that I want to highlight, and that one I've got to note that we're going to have to do a little more research on this one, because item 3 is talking about food trucks basically, and it's requiring hood systems. It's got regulations for the propane and for cooking oils. Now, the question is going to be jurisdiction. How does a code official get jurisdiction in a food truck? So that's one we'll get back to you on the next time we're together. The next couple of items are a sign of the times, things that are new. We have a new Chapter 12 that deals with energy systems. So that's going to bring in the solar, that's going to bring in your battery storage areas, all those types of things. Again, we're going to more renewable energy sources, so the code is trying to keep up to speed on those. Another one that is highlighted in item number 4, number 16, 17, and 18 deals with egress. And one of the first items in number 4 is fire department access when we're in lockdown mode in educational facilities. You know, with all the crazy things that have been going on, schools are getting more and more into this idea that they can lock down the school. Well, now they're starting to look at this and say, okay, if the school's locked down and we need to get the fire service in, what's our plan to get the fire service in around the lockdown? So again, sign of the times trying to give us a better approach in the event that there's a problem. Another one, item number 12, gives schools the ability to pick locations or alternate locations for some of their fire extinguishers. And basically what it's saying, if you put the fire extinguishers in the classrooms, then we will not require them in some of the areas in the hallways. Again, they would be under supervision in the classroom, not so much in the hallway. Again, just a way to help with that problem. A few other items. Item number 7 deals with an issue that I've been listening to for the last 20 years, and that is standpipe hoses. A lot of the fire services don't want the hose there. They want to bring their own hose so that they know that the hose that they have is good, it's going to work. So item number 7 gives us, gives the code official the ability to say, as long as the fire service agrees they've got the hose, we'll allow it not to be there. Locks allowed on hose connections. You know, we've had problems for years with caps disappearing, people putting rocks in the pipes, whatever it may be. There's a section in the code that says as long as the code official verifies that the keys match what the fire department has, locks may be able to be put in. Another thing for the fire service, item number 25, is rapid shutdown for solar systems. If you got a solar voltaic system on your roof, fire service shows up, there's going to be a way that you can shut that system down quickly so that if they need to access the roof, there'd be a way for them to do that safely. Item number 22 is getting me into the life safety issues. There is an ability in this section to put fall protection on windows that are egress openings. So if you got an emergency escape and rescue opening, but it's 3 stories off the ground, you may want to put some type of protection in front of that window, keep small children from falling out of it. So there's a way to deal with that. Item number 36 is to deal with buildings that are under construction. And basically, the code says now that once we get to 50 feet above grade under construction, we need to have a fixed set of stairs so we can get people to different levels, emergency services, whatever it may be. They're dropping that to 40 feet. Pretty insignificant change. And then from there, we go into some of the chapters in the back of the book, the hazmat chapters. As you can imagine, I think every time we've updated the code, the hazardous material section is always, gets much larger. The thing that seems to be the hot topic this time is chapter 51, which is aerosols, aerosol cooking sprays, aerosols of any type. There's a lot of language in there that deals with those types of things. As a major overview of the whole thing, I don't see anything in here that looks like it's a big showstopper. Something that we're going to say, boy, we really don't like this. Most of it seems to make common sense. So we will continue our review, and when we come back next Codes Council meeting, I will give you the Paul Harvey version, which is the rest of the story, and we'll go from there. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Whitney. Property Maintenance Code, Mr. Hathaway.
Okay. Just a few items here that I don't think it's been completed.
Gerard, stop for a second.
I'm running out of juice. So give me 2 minutes to.
Sure. Why don't we take a 5-minute break in case other people have juice?
Oh my God.
I have bad dreams about you. This is why I'm here. Stop talking. Yeah, I think
Highway people are more restrictive local standards. Affects you, it doesn't affect more restrictive next
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little concerned that we're going to the, sorry, you know, here's the max. You could argue, my point is, so that means, that you could argue it this way if you wanted to try to figure out a way to do it, you could argue it this way, you could do it.
So you'll go a little longer than you anticipated?
Just way out.
It happens.
Oh, no, I'm sure. I thought it would be done by now too.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather have it nice and even, but in cases where that may not be the case, then allow those other local jurisdictions to do things. I think that's not, I think that's in our purview. No, as far as the gating, I lost it did count. An hour second local. Well, yeah, if they're not providing that information, nothing has to do with everything.
Yeah. Second go around, we had to compare it with the state development. And I was glad that you said that. Right.
No, I the entire council. Let's do this.
Oh, I think, yeah.
5 minutes is up. Back on the clock. Got things to do. Let's finish this. Gerard. Joe gets back.
Easy.
Hi. How you doing?
Good. The next meeting
Yeah,
right. Yeah, try to.
Necessary to get the product.
I'll put it in something.
Fire guys. That's a bang.
Have some provide this data. No, that's tough. That is very tough. Exactly.
Safe trip, right? Then when the phone comes, congratulations.
I know.
waiting for that to be.
No thanks.
Why did you come back?
Yes. I did. Yes, I did. Then I gave her my card as well.
Cares about it.
It's like,
You didn't go home after
thank you. Thanks, Bill.
I haven't really had a chance.
Oh, really good.
Last time I was downstairs, somehow it was yeah, so I'm no closer to home yesterday. But what is he doing? Yeah, it is.
Making through everything is different.
All right.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good.
What on this Gerard?
Gerard. Brian.
Yeah.
Grab Gerard. I'll see you. Gerard.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was supposed to do like in the code hearings, Gerard, you know, we ought to get off the table, off the dais. I am now representing myself, not a voting member of the committee.
Okay. Sorry for the break. We're back live. And we are on the property maintenance code. We only have 2 codes to go, property maintenance and energy.
It's like out.
Then we'll move on to public comments and end the meeting. Gerard, property maintenance.
This will be very short. There's just a few items on here so far. And basically, if you've got non-potable water reuse systems, you have to maintain them. And if you decide not to maintain them, they must be abandoned property and not kept around to save against hazards through structures in the public. Fire resistance ratings, modifications have been made to better correlate the requirements of the property maintenance code with the fire code and fire protection system. Modifications have been made to require protection systems to be maintained and tested in accordance with the IFC. And this should require ongoing inspection, testing, and maintenance that's included in the IFC. That's it so far.
Any questions or comments for Gerard? Hearing none, we're on to Mr. Hill. Joe Hill, Energy Code. Joe's going to give us the crib note version, aren't you, Joe?
Yep. Afternoon, I'm Joseph Hill, Assistant Director of Code Administration. I've done a fairly comprehensive review of the 2018 IECC. I'll boil it down for you. And if you'd like to follow along in your notable changes handout, I'm starting on page 20. I'm not going to talk about each and every one of these, but these do represent, lucky, right? These do represent some of the more significant changes. Some of these modifications are accomplished to align with ASHRAE 90.1 2016, which is our newest standard, our newest version of the ASHRAE 90.1 standard. Some of the modifications are added to the code to publish newer, more updated U.S. Department of Energy equipment standards. Some are just for better alignment of the code. Many are editorial, and some are just a reorganization of certain sections. There are several modifications which are somewhat significant. The first one I'll start with on page 20 is number 2, roof assembly. There's a misunderstanding in our current commercial provisions of the Energy Code for roof assemblies. That misunderstanding is the understanding that the minimum prescriptive R value must be provided on all areas of flat commercial roofs, which is not the case. We've received a number of phone calls on this issue. Thankfully, in the new code, there is clarifying language which does indicate that we can, in fact, reduce that R value at drainage points of the roof. Number 4, solar heat gain coefficients. In climate design zones 4 and 5, there are some moderate increases, 5 to 10% in solar heat gain coefficients. This is one of the changes that is to align with ASHRAE standard 90.1 2016. Space conditioning of vestibules, number 5. This is a new code section. And this is another standard which now aligns with ASHRAE 90.1 2016. Currently, there is no requirement or very little requirement for conditioned vestibules. This new requirement requires that if the outdoor temperature rises above 45 degrees, that the heating is shut down. This requirement also limits heating temperature to a maximum of 60 degrees Fahrenheit and cooling temperature to not less than 85 degrees, just so you don't boil when you walk through it. Number 6, automatic HVAC control in R1, hotel, motel, guest rooms. This is a big one. This comes from the International Green Construction Code and also ASHRAE 189.1, which is their green construction code. This adds an ability to greatly reduce energy use in hotel, motel, guest rooms. And it does so through deeper thermostatic setbacks and ventilation control when the rooms are not occupied. In this change, if the room is unoccupied for 30 minutes or more, the heating or cooling temperature is set back 4 degrees. Additionally, when the guest room is not occupied for 16 hours or more, it goes into a deep temperature setback, lowers the heating to not less than 60 degrees and the cooling to not less than 80 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a great energy reduction capability. And in long periods of non-occupancy, there is a purge ventilation requirement that's added. Believe it or not, we have technology that does this. Some of the hotels you've stayed in, and I know some of the hotels I've stayed in, already applied these technologies. Warm air furnaces, air conditioning units, unit heaters, gas and oil furnaces. Throughout the code, there are numerous tables that have been modified to now comply with the newer federal requirements, which are more stringent, obviously. Maybe not so obvious. Number 11, lighting controls. Occupancy sensor for lighting in open plan office areas. This is also a significant potential energy savings for open plan offices, such as we have in our building here. Lighting, in these cases, light control can turn on lighting in one specific cubicle area rather than lighting the whole plan area up. For those of us who are familiar with energy costs for commercial buildings, lighting is the highest cost portion of the energy bill. Very different from single-family homes. Number 12, your interior lighting power allowances. This modification changes the interior lighting power density allotment to align again with ASHRAE standard 90.1 2016, employs newer technologies, LED technologies, which are more currently available. It follows with exterior lighting power densities as well. And in this change, tradable allowances are removed from the code. And again, these two lighting standards are to mirror what we find in ASHRAE 90.1 2016. That does it for the highlights of commercial energy. Residential energy code. We find very, very few changes in the residential energy code for a change. But the ones we find are pretty beneficial. We now find an allowance for log homes to utilize ICC 400 for the prescriptive envelope table. It's a big deal for the log home industry because up until now, they had very few ways to comply. So we're happy to see this. They needed a more relaxed prescriptive path, and now they have it. Fenestration requirements. Prescriptive U factors have been lowered slightly across the board. And this is probably the only energy stringency increase we see in the residential provisions this time around. We probably will see in the order of 1% or less of stringency improvement in the residential section. It's different for commercial, but in the residential section, it's very slight. Number 23, ERI methodology, energy rating index. This is another one we're very happy to see because it now allows ResNet to be utilized as the codification for the rating system. Up until this time, we have had no approved rating system to codify the energy rating index portion. Some municipalities allow ResNet currently, but ResNet is not an exact alignment, at least the ResNet we have right now is not an exact alignment for ERI. Some municipalities allow it, some don't. And finally, 24, energy rating index values have been reduced slightly. In our current version of the code, the ERI index pegs the energy savings at 10 to 12% above baseline code, prescriptive baseline code. This new ERI allowance now pegs the ERI index at prescriptive code baseline. So it's actually a reduction in energy. So we might want to think about that when we do any modifications to the energy code, keeping in mind that if we're adopting a new standard, we want to be slightly above where we currently are. I have not talked about a number of provisions on your handouts. If you have questions on those or on any of the ones I've spoken about, I'll take questions at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right, hearing none, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Actually, what Joe says sort of goes for the council. The division definitely wants to know what provisions you're worried about, what provisions you find important as you go through this very significant document. Because that's they can provide better information, or they can, we can talk about it at the next council meeting. So just throwing that out there. Gerard remains your point of contact. He'll get you to the right people to discuss. All right, next public comment period, item number 10. I believe I've got two people on the list. The first, Norm Martin from the National Elevator Industry Incorporated. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving the opportunity for me to appear in front of you today to talk about a small issue that looks like an issue that just needs a correction what's occurred. And again, my name is Norman Martin. I'm representing the National Elevator Industry Incorporated, and I work for Schindler Elevator as a Codes and Standards Officer, representing them as well. Here today regarding a conflict between the Energy Code and the New York City Elevator Code. When you adopted the Energy Code across the state of New York, there was no conflict with the balance of the state related to the Elevator Code, as it was associated with escalator slowdown mode. And in the Energy Code, in the commercial section 405.9.2, escalators and moving walks shall comply with 817.1, which is the Elevator Code, and shall have automatic controls configured to reduce speed to the minimum permitted speed in accordance with that elevator code or applicable local code when not conveying passengers. That's a type of technology that was just introduced under the 2010 edition of the elevator code. So 2010 or 2013 or 2016. The state of New York under 2013, there's no issue. The city of New York, there is an issue. And that's because they're under the 2004 edition of the code, and their standard prohibits the varying of any speed of any escalator. And as such, our member companies and others who install escalator equipment, which is a highly complex piece of machinery and lots of manufacturing issues, a number of our projects are in limbo because following the New York elevator standard, a certain type of equipment was specified, And now the city is in a situation where they're asking for the energy code to be applied, and there is a full conflict that you just can't do one or the other at the last moment. So we're in limbo, essentially, about decisions. The elevator code under A17.1, as in New York City, in the 2004 edition, that references 6.1.4, and it indicates the rate of speed shall be not more than 100 foot per minute, measure along the center line of the steps in the direction of travel, and the speed attained by an escalator after startup shall not be intentionally varied. And in the 2010 and later editions that you're referring from your energy code, it permits variation of the escalator speed after startup, and it requires a number of conditions to be met: that the rated speed is not exceeded, the minimum speed shall not be less than 10 foot per minute, so it goes into a crawl mode. Passenger detection means has to be installed. That's a kind of sophisticated method to if I'm walking towards an escalator, it needs to detect me well before I get to the escalator in order for the acceleration curves to ramp up and get the equipment running. And it needs to be able to detect once I've departed as well. And also provide that same detection means to ensure that it continues to operate at full speed if it doesn't detect a loss of usage. And so the request from NEI is that the language should be modified to recognize that New York City is exempted from the requirements until such time that a newer A17.1 standard is adopted by the New York City Building Department that recognizes A17.1, 6.1.4.1.2.
Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none.
Are you going to make the written version of that available to us?
I did. I sent it to the email that was in that Kevin Brinkman had.
Okay, that would have been mine.
Yes.
I didn't get that yet.
I just sent it this morning.
Okay.
I'm on a round trip here. I'm from Cleveland. I should not be here. Yes.
Is this a problem that is unique to New York City?
Yes, it is unique to New York City. One of my duties of many is to track the adoption of the energy code. And right now, as you know, there's a limited adoption of the 2015 edition across the country. And the locations that have adopted the 2015 have also are on the 2010 elevator code or later, so there's no issue. We've got 4 or 5 out there of major states that are in the same situation as being before the 2010, but they've not adopted 2015 yet. But
is this an issue then relating to the energy code that's been adopted by New York City?
They read the same, yes. Read the same. The state and the cities read the same. No difference in language.
New York City typically adopts its own local energy code as it's authorized by statute too. And I'm just wondering, did you raise this issue with New York City?
Others have, yes. And the reason why I'm here today, because right now it's kind of going this way. There's no one taking the rein, but taking it by the reins. In errata, I don't know what the answer might be to indicate that the intention was not to bypass the locally adopted elevator code in that particular exception.
Mr. Rudd, look at what you said.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Okay, second name on the list is Dottie Harris. Dottie.
I will be 2 seconds. Dottie Harris from the International Code Council. In reference to that more restrictive local standard on the fire separation between the garage and the kitchen, I also just wanted to highlight that the public comment or the CDP access, the code development process, it would be a great opportunity, I think, for maybe a member of the council or the representative from the jurisdiction to also propose it at the International Code Council level. I know that won't help you with the 2018 because we're currently in the 2021 code development process, but it would be the Group B, which will be next year. So right now the Group A cycle is open now. Group B would be the International Residential Code. I think it would be the building provision side. So that would be open until basically January, I think, 9th of 2019. So there's plenty of time. I just wanted to go on the record to highlight that. And actually, the gentleman left, all I was gonna just go on record by saying New York City is in the process of updating to the 2015 codes, and they do have technical subcommittees that, and I know they do have an elevator committee, so I'm thinking it wouldn't be, as Joe, I think, was trying to highlight, it wouldn't necessarily be an energy provision. I think it would probably be their elevator code provision referenced in the building code. So if he were still here, I would give him my card and help him get in touch with the right people in New York City. But I just wanted to go on record saying that it's not a problem with the New York State code.
If you'd like, if you want to send me an email, I can
Sure.
forward him your information.
I will
Say
do that, and I
you
can maybe
would.
put him in touch with the right people in the Department of Buildings. Thank you.
Thanks, Dottie. Okay, agenda item 11, future meetings. I have my sheets. I can say the future meetings are going to be tentatively scheduled for March 7th,